The morning sun cast long shadows across the refugee camp on Corvin 7, its pale light doing little to soften the harsh reality of the temporary shelters that stretched as far as the eye could see. Zara knelt beside a young Velthian child, her slender fingers glowing with a soft blue radiance as she channeled her healing energy into the girl's infected wound. The child's fever broke instantly, her breathing becoming steady and peaceful. "Thank you, healer Zara," the child's mother whispered, tears streaming down her scaled cheeks. I thought I was going to lose her." Zara managed a tired smile, though exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders. "She'll be fine now. Just make sure she drinks plenty of water and rests." She stood slowly, her legs shaking slightly from the effort. Each healing took something from her, and she'd already treated dozens of refugees since dawn as she moved to the next patient. Zara caught sight of a tall human man watching her from across the medical tent. His sandy brown hair caught the morning light, and his green eyes held a mixture of concern and admiration. She'd seen him around the camp before. Marcus Webb, one of the human aid coordinators who'd arrived with the relief mission 3 weeks ago. Unlike many of the other humans who maintained professional distance, Marcus seemed genuinely invested in understanding the refugees' needs. "Zara," called out Jorik, an elderly Velthian who'd appointed himself as her assistant. "There's a family with scale rot in Sector 7. They're asking for you specifically." She nodded, gathering her medical supplies. Scale rot was particularly difficult to treat, requiring sustained healing energy over several sessions. It would drain her completely, but she couldn't refuse. Too many had already been lost to the disease as she made her way through the crowded paths between shelters. Zara felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Marcus walking beside her, carrying a steaming cup of the nutritious broth. The humans had been distributing. "You've been working since before sunrise," he said, his voice warm with concern. "When was the last time you ate something?" Zara accepted the cup gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. "I'll eat later, after I finish with the scale rot cases." Marcus frowned, his brow creasing with worry. "That's what you said yesterday, and the day before that." He paused, studying her face. "Your healing gift is remarkable, but you're pushing yourself too hard. I've watched you. You give everything to heal others. But who takes care of the healer?" The question caught Zara off guard. In all her years of training and practice, no one had ever asked her that. Her people respected her abilities, sought her help desperately, but the idea of someone caring for her well-being was foreign. She'd been taught that healers served others, that their own needs came last. "I'm fine," she said quietly, though even she could hear the exhaustion in her voice. Marcus stopped walking, gently taking her arm. "No, you're not. Look at me, Zara." When she met his eyes, she saw something that made her breath catch. Genuine worry, not for what she could do for others, but for her. "You're swaying on your feet. Your hands are trembling. When did you last sleep?" Zara wanted to protest, to insist she was strong enough to continue, but the kindness in his voice made her defenses crumble. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. My family, my home world when the Kefmori attacked. I couldn't save them, Marcus. I was supposed to be a healer, and I couldn't save the people I loved most." Marcus's expression softened, with understanding, the survivor's guilt. "I've seen it in other refugees. You blame yourself for living when others didn't. Shouldn't I?" Zara's voice broke. "I have this gift, these abilities, and I failed when it mattered most. Now I have to use them to make up for that failure, to prove I deserve to be here when so many others aren't." "That's not how healing works," Marcus said gently. "And that's not how life works either. You can't save everyone, Zara. No one can. But that doesn't diminish the value of those you do save." He gestured toward the medical tent where she'd just been working. That little girl whose fever you broke, she's alive because of you. The miners who were trapped in the cave-in last. Weak, they're walking because of you. The elderly Velthian with the heart condition. He's here to see another day because of you. Zara felt tears pricking her eyes. But it's never enough. There are always more who need help, more who are suffering. Then let others help you help them, Marcus said. I've been studying Velthian physiology, learning about your culture. I know your people value self-reliance, but humans believe in something different. We believe in sharing the burden. He pulled out a small device from his pocket, a bioscanner modified for Velthian physiology. I've been working on this with the medical team. It can detect the early stages of scale rot, identify infections before they become critical. It won't replace your healing gift, but it could help you prioritize. Focus your energy where it's needed most. Zara stared at the device, then at Marcus. You did this. For me? I did it for the camp, for everyone who depends on you. But yes, I did it for you too. His cheeks flushed slightly. I've watched you work, Zara. I've seen your compassion, your dedication. You're remarkable, not just as a healer, but as a person. And remarkable people deserve to be taken care of too. For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, the chaos of the camp fading around them. Zara found herself studying Marcus's face, the laugh lines around his eyes, the gentle strength in his jaw, the way he looked at her not as a tool to be used, but as someone worthy of care. Why? She asked softly. Why do you care so much about us? About me? Your people could have sent aid supplies and left. Instead, you're here, living in these conditions, learning our ways. Marcus smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his features. Because I believe in connection. I believe that understanding each other, truly seeing each other, is the first step toward healing. Not just physical healing, but the kind of healing that brings people together across any divide. He reached out tentatively, and when she didn't pull away, he gently took her hand. I see you, Zara, not just the healer, but the person who stays up at night worrying about patients, who gives away her own food rations to hungry children, who carries the weight of the world on her shoulders because she cares too much to do anything else. Zara felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with her healing abilities. I see you too, Marcus. You could be sitting in a comfortable office somewhere, but you're here in this dust and heat because you believe in something bigger than yourself. They were interrupted by a commotion near Sector 7, shouting voices and the sound of running feet. Both rushed toward the disturbance, finding a crowd gathered around a collapsed shelter. A family of 4 Velthians was trapped beneath the fallen structure, including 2 small children. The supports must have given way, someone called out. We need to get them out, but moving the debris could cause more collapse. Zara immediately knelt beside the wreckage, placing her hands on the metal beams. Through her healing senses, she could feel the family's life forces, weak but stable. They're alive, but one of the children is badly injured. Internal bleeding. Marcus was already coordinating the rescue effort, his training in disaster relief evident as he organized teams to carefully remove debris. We need to shore up the structure first, he called out. Zara, can you stabilize the injured child's condition until we can get them out? Without hesitation, Zara pressed her hands against the metal, sending her healing energy through the wreckage to the trapped family. The effort was enormous, channeling her power across barriers and maintaining it while the rescue proceeded, but she held firm. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Sweat beaded on Zara's forehead as she poured her strength into keeping the family alive. Just when she thought she might collapse from the strain, she felt a warm hand on her shoulder, Marcus, lending her his strength, his presence steadying her. You've got this, he whispered. I'm here. Together, They worked as the rescue team carefully extracted the family. The injured child was brought to Zara immediately, and she used the last of her energy to heal the internal bleeding, sealing the damaged organs and restoring the little one strength dot as the child opened her eyes and smiled up at her parents. Zara finally allowed herself to collapse. Marcus caught her before she hit the ground, cradling her against his chest. "I've got you," he murmured, and something in his voice made her believe it completely. As consciousness faded, Zara realized that for the first time since the attack on her home world, she felt truly safe. Not because the danger had passed, but because she wasn't facing it alone anymore. In Marcus's arms, she found something she'd thought lost forever, the possibility of being cared for, of being valued not for what she could give, but for who she was. The last thing she remembered was the sound of his heartbeat, steady and strong, promising that when she woke up, he would still be there. The crystal-clear waters of Thalassa shimmered with bioluminescent plankton as Dr. Nissa Thalandra glided through the depths toward the ancient coral city of Murthes. Her gill slits fluttered rhythmically, filtering oxygen from the water while her webbed fingers traced the intricate patterns carved into the living reef structures by her ancestors millennia ago. The Nereid researcher had spent the last 3 years documenting these underwater ruins. But today something was different. There was an intruder in her sanctuary. Nissa's large, dark eyes, adapted for the ocean depths, detected the bulky form of a human in an environmental suit near the central temple. Her people's natural camouflage abilities kicked in, her skin shifting to match the coral's pale pink hues as she approached cautiously. The human was taking detailed scans of the ancient hieroglyphs, his movements careful and respectful as he worked. She'd heard about the human research expedition that had arrived on Thalassa 3 weeks ago, but she'd assumed they went themselves to the shallow coastal areas like most off-world visitors. No one had bothered to venture this deep into Nereid territory before, and certainly not to study their most sacred sites. The human turned, and through his helmet's transparent faceplate, Nissa could see kind brown eyes widening in surprise. He raised his hands in a universal gesture of peace, his voice crackling through the suit's communication system. "Please don't be afraid. I'm Dr. David Shun, marine biologist with the Galactic Archaeological Survey. I've been studying your people's incredible architectural techniques." He gestured toward the carved walls. "I've never seen anything like this integration of living and constructed elements. It's revolutionary." Nissa's camouflage flickered, revealing her true appearance, pale blue skin with silver markings that traced elegant patterns along her arms and face, long flowing hair that moved like seaweed in the current, and the distinctive gill slits that marked her as a deep-water Nereid. She floated there, studying him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "You're trespassing," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the water, despite the human's reliance on technology to communicate. "This is a sacred site. Off-worlders are not permitted here." David's expression showed genuine remorse. "I apologize. I didn't realize the surface authorities gave our team clearance to study the reef systems. I was following the ancient construction patterns deeper and deeper until I found this place. It's breathtaking." Despite her annoyance at the intrusion, Nissa found herself intrigued by his obvious appreciation for her ancestors' work. Most surface dwellers saw the ocean as empty space to be crossed, not as a living world worthy of study and respect. "You understand what you're looking at?" she asked, swimming closer but maintaining a careful distance. "I'm trying to," David replied honestly. "From what I can tell, your people didn't just build with coral. They cultivated it, guided its growth into specific patterns. The mathematical precision is extraordinary, but it's also completely organic. It's like your ancestors were conducting a symphony of living architecture." Nissa's eyes widened. In all her years of research, she'd never heard anyone describe it quite that way, but it captured something essential about how her people had once shaped their environment. You're the first off-worlder to understand that. Most think we simply hollowed out existing reefs. That would be like saying humans built their cities by carving mountains, David said with a slight smile. The complexity here suggests generations of careful planning and cultivation. How long did it take to grow this city? According to our historical records, about 200 years, Nissa found herself answering. My ancestors would sing to the coral, encouraging it to grow in specific patterns. Each family had their own song, their own technique. The city was as much grown as built. David's eyes lit up with fascination. Sonic cultivation? That's incredible. We've seen similar techniques with some plant species, but never on this scale. The acoustic properties of water would make it much more effective than anything possible on land. For the first time in years, Nissa felt a spark of excitement about sharing her research. Most of her own people had moved to the surface cities, abandoning the old ways. The few who remained showed polite interest in her work, but didn't share her passion for understanding their heritage. Would you ... She hesitated, then continued, Would you like to see the resonance chambers? They're how the builders coordinated the growth patterns across the entire city. David's enthusiasm was infectious. I would be honored, but only if you're comfortable with it. I don't want to intrude on something sacred. Nissa considered this. The human had shown more genuine interest and understanding in 10 minutes than most people did in years. Follow me, but stay close. The deep currents can be dangerous for someone in surface gear. She led him through the winding passages of Murthys, pointing out architectural features and explaining the techniques her ancestors had used. David asked thoughtful questions, his scientific curiosity balanced by obvious respect for the cultural significance of what he was seeing. Here, Nissa said, bringing them to a vast chamber where the coral walls curved inward to create perfect acoustic focal points. This is where the song shapers would coordinate their work. The acoustics amplify and direct sound to every part of the city. David activated his scanner, studying the chamber's dimensions. The mathematical precision is astounding. This is a perfect logarithmic spiral. It would create standing wave patterns that could carry specific frequencies to predetermined locations. He looked up at her with awe. Your ancestors were acoustic engineers on a level we've never achieved. Most of the songs are lost now, Nissa said sadly. When the Kethmori attacked our outer settlements, many of our people fled to the surface. The old knowledge went with them. You're trying to preserve it, David observed. That's why you're here alone, documenting everything. Nissa nodded. Someone has to. If we lose this knowledge, we lose part of what makes us Nereid, but it's lonely work. My people think I'm obsessed with the past instead of building the future. David moved closer, his bulky suit making him clumsy in the water, but his intent clear. I understand. I've spent my career studying ocean ecosystems that are disappearing. Sometimes it feels like you're the only one who cares about something incredibly important. Yes, Nissa breathed, surprised by how perfectly he'd captured her feelings. Exactly that. They spent the next several hours exploring the city together. Nissa sharing stories and legends, while David provided scientific insights that helped her understand her own culture in new ways. When his suit's oxygen reserves began running low, they reluctantly returned to the surface. This has been extraordinary, David said, as they floated in the shallow lagoon where his research vessel was anchored. I've learned more about marine architecture in one day than in years of study. Thank you for sharing this with me. Nissa found herself reluctant to see him go. Will you ... Will you be returning to the deep sites? I'd like to, if you'll have me. I think our research could be complementary. I'm studying how coral ecosystems respond to environmental changes, and you're documenting how your people work with those same systems. Together, we might be able to understand both the biological and cultural aspects. I'd like that, Nissa admitted. It's been years since I've had someone to discuss my work with who truly understands its significance. David smiled, his eyes warm even through the helmet. Then I'll see you tomorrow? Same time? Tomorrow, Nissa agreed, watching as he swam back to his vessel. Over the following weeks, their daily meetings became the highlight of both their research schedules. David would arrive each morning with new questions and insights, while Nissa shared increasingly personal aspects of Nereid culture and history. They worked together to create detailed maps of the city, combining her cultural knowledge with his scientific instruments. But it was the quiet moments that meant the most, when David would remove his helmet in the air-filled chambers and they could speak face to face, or when Nissa would demonstrate the fragment of an ancient song she'd managed to reconstruct, her voice echoing through the coral halls. One afternoon, as they explored a section of the city that had been damaged by seismic activity, David noticed Nissa's distress. This was the children's quarter, she explained, her voice heavy with sadness. Families would raise their young here, teaching them to sing to the coral, to understand the ocean's rhythms. Now it's just ... broken. David studied the collapsed passages, his mind working. What if it doesn't have to stay that way? Nissa looked at him in surprise. What do you mean? I've been analyzing the coral samples you showed me. The organisms are still viable. They're just dormant. With the right acoustic stimulation, they might resume growth. We could restore this section. That's impossible, Nissa said, though. Hope flickered in her eyes. The songs are lost, the techniques forgotten. But you've reconstructed fragments, David pointed out, and I've been recording the acoustic properties of the intact sections. We could combine your cultural knowledge with modern sonic analysis to recreate the growth patterns. The idea was audacious, but as they discussed it, Nissa felt the excitement she hadn't experienced in years. It would take months, maybe years of work. I'm not going anywhere, David said simply. This is too important to abandon. That evening, as they floated in the lagoon, watching Thalas's twin moons rise over the horizon, Nissa felt a shift in her feelings toward the human researcher. Somewhere between their scholarly discussions and shared discoveries, something deeper had grown. David, she said quietly, why is this so important to you? You could study any ocean in the galaxy. Why stay here, in the depths, working on something that isn't even your own culture? David was quiet for a long moment, his eyes reflecting. The moonlight. Because beauty and knowledge shouldn't be lost. Because understanding each other, really understanding, is what makes us more than just isolated species floating in the dark. He turned to look at her. And because working with you has been the most fulfilling experience of my career. You see things I could never see alone. Nissa felt her heart flutter, a sensation she'd only read about in surface literature. I feel the same way. You've helped me understand my own people's achievements in ways I never could have alone. David reached out tentatively, his hand finding hers in the water. Nissa, I hope this doesn't sound presumptuous, but I've been wondering, do you ever think about the future? About what happens after our research is complete? I've been thinking about it constantly, she admitted, and I've realized that the future I want includes you in it. Not just as a research partner, but as... She searched for the right words, as someone who understands what I'm trying to preserve and why it matters. David's smile was radiant. I was hoping you'd say that. I've been wondering if there might be a way for us to continue working together, officially. A permanent research partnership studying the intersection of culture and marine biology. A permanent partnership, Nissa repeated, the words carrying layers of meaning. I'd like that very much. As they swam back toward the ancient city, their hands intertwined, Nissa realized that she'd found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. In trying to preserve the past, she'd discovered a future worth building, one where understanding bridged not just the gap between species, but the space between two hearts that had found their perfect complement in each other. The Coral City of Myrthis had been built with songs of harmony and growth. Now, as she and David planned their restoration project, Nissa understood that they were composing a new song, one that would unite their voices in a melody that transcended the boundaries between land and sea, between human and nereid, between the past and the future they would create together. The alarm klaxons of Tempest Station pierced the artificial atmosphere as another damaged ship limped into the docking bay. Jake Morrison wiped grease from his hands and looked up from the cargo hauler he'd been repairing to see a sleek Sithari vessel trailing smoke from its port engine. The ship's elegant, wing-like design was marred by scoring. Along its hull, clear signs of a pirate attack. Jake had been running Morrison's repair bay on the trade station for 3 years, building a reputation for honest work and fair prices. The station orbited the gas giant Tempest, serving as a waypoint for merchants, travelers, and anyone else brave enough to navigate the treacherous shipping lanes of the Outer Rim. It was dangerous territory, but Jake had grown up on the frontier and knew no other life. The Sithari ship touched down with a grinding screech of damaged landing gear. Jake grabbed his diagnostic kit and headed over, expecting to meet another gruff cargo pilot looking to get back to space as quickly as possible. Instead, the airlock hissed open to reveal something that made him stop in his tracks. The pilot was Sithari, a species Jake had only seen in holovids. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her lithe frame covered in fine, iridescent feathers that shifted from deep purple to midnight blue in the station's lights. Her wings, folded against her back, were magnificent even in their current disheveled state. But it was her eyes that caught Jake's attention. Brilliant amber, fierce with pride and frustration. "My ship needs repairs," she announced without preamble, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species. "The engine coupling is damaged, and the navigation array is completely offline." Jake found his voice. "I'm Jake Morrison. I run this repair bay. What's your name?" The Sithari's feathers ruffled slightly. "Kira Velthara. And before you ask, yes, I can afford your services. Despite what you might think, I'm not some desperate refugee." There was a defensive edge to her words that made Jake frown. "I wasn't going to ask about payment. I was going to ask if you were hurt. Those look like plasma burns on your hull. Pirate attack?" Kira's expression softened slightly, surprise flickering across her features. "Yes, 3 ships jumped me. At the nexus point, I outran them, but not before they damaged my engines." "You're lucky to be alive," Jake said, walking around her ship and assessing the damage. Most cargo pilots would have been sitting ducks against 3 pirates. "I'm not." "Most pilots," Kira replied with a hint of pride. "My people are born to fly. These wings aren't just for show." Jake looked up at her, noting the way she unconsciously spread her wings slightly when discussing her flying abilities. "I believe it. The way you brought this ship in with a damaged engine, that was skilled piloting. Most people would have crashed." Kira blinked in surprise, her feathers smoothing down. "You ... you can tell?" "I've been around ships and pilots my whole life," Jake said with a shrug. "I know good flying when I see it. Give me a couple hours to run diagnostics, and I'll have a repair estimate for you." As Jake worked, he became aware of Kira watching him intently. The Sithari paced the bay with restless energy, her wings twitching with barely contained impatience. Every few minutes, she would check her personal communicator, her expression growing more troubled. "Expecting someone?" Jake asked, looking up from where he was examining the damaged engine coupling. "I have a delivery deadline," Kira said tersely. Medical supplies for the mining colony on Kepler 442. They're dealing with an outbreak of Rigelian fever. Jake's hands stilled on his tools. That's a 3-day journey from here, even with a fast ship. 2 days if you know the routes, Kira corrected. But not if I'm stuck here waiting for repairs. There was genuine distress in her voice, and Jake realized that beneath her proud exterior, she was deeply worried about the people counting on her cargo. How long do you have? The supplies need to arrive within 36 hours, or the colony's medical officer says they'll start losing patience. Kira's wings drooped slightly. I've never missed a deadline. Never. Jake studied the damaged components, his mind racing. I can have you back in space in 18 hours, but it's going to require some creative solutions. Your coupling isn't just damaged, it's completely fried. I'll need to fabricate a custom replacement. Can you do it? Kira asked, hope flickering in her amber eyes. I can try, Jake said honestly, but I'll need to work through the night, and I'll need your help. You know this ship better than anyone. Kira nodded without hesitation. Tell me what you need. What followed was the most intense 18 hours of Jake's career. He and Kira worked side by side, fabricating parts, rerouting systems, and rebuilding the damaged navigation array from scratch. As they worked, Jake found himself increasingly impressed by Kira's technical knowledge and her dedication to her mission. You're not just a pilot, he observed around hour 10, watching her deftly rewire a complex circuit board. You're an engineer. My people believe in understanding our tools, Kira replied, not looking up from her work. A ship is more than just a vehicle. It's a partner. You have to know its heart to truly fly. Jake found himself smiling at the poetic way she described the relationship between pilot and ship. Is that why you chose cargo hauling? The freedom to fly? Kira's hands stilled for a moment. I chose it because I needed to prove something. My people, they have certain expectations about what roles different individuals should fill. I was supposed to be a teacher, passing on our cultural traditions to the young. But I wanted to fly among the stars, not just in our home system. So you left to become a pilot, Jake said, understanding the sacrifice that must have required. I left to become independent, Kira corrected, to prove that I could make my own way without relying on the flock's support. But sometimes, she trailed off, her expression growing distant. Sometimes it gets lonely, Jake finished quietly. Kira looked at him in surprise. Yes. How did you know? I left my family's mining operation to start this repair bay, Jake explained. They thought I was crazy, giving up a steady job to work on the frontier. Most days I love what I do, but yeah, it gets lonely. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the shared understanding creating a bond between them. Jake found himself stealing glances at Kira as she worked, admiring not just her beauty, but her competence and determination. There was something magnetic about her focus, the way she attacked problems with fierce intelligence. Jake, Kira said suddenly, why are you doing this? Working through the night? Pushing yourself to meet my deadline? You could have quoted me a standard repair time and charged extra for the rush job. Jake considered the question, his hands continuing their work on the engine coupling. Because those people on Kepler 442 need their medicine. And because I can see how much this means to you. You're not just delivering cargo, you're saving lives. But you don't even know me, Kira pointed out. I know enough, Jake said, meeting her eyes. I know you're willing to fly through pirate-infested space to deliver medical supplies. I know you're working 18 hours straight to make sure those supplies get where they need to go. I know you left everything familiar to chase your dreams. That tells me what kind of person you are. Kira's feathers shimmered with emotion. Most people see my species and make assumptions. They think we're arrogant, that we look down on ground-bound species. Do you? Jake asked with a slight smile. Sometimes, Kira admitted with surprising honesty. But not you. You see ships and pilots as they really are, not as stereotypes. You treat me like ... like an equal. That's because you are, Jake said simply. Species doesn't matter when you're working side by side toward a common goal. With 2 hours to spare, they finished the repairs. Jake ran final diagnostics while Kira conducted her pre-flight checks, both of them exhausted but triumphant. The ship purged beautifully, all systems showing green. She's ready, Jake announced, though he found himself reluctant to see Kira. Leave. Kira turned to him, her expression complex. I don't know how to thank you. The colony will get their medicine on time, Jake interrupted. That's thanks enough. Kira stepped closer, her wings spreading slightly in what Jake was beginning to recognize as a sign of strong emotion. It's not enough. Not nearly enough. You saved lives today, Jake Morrison. My people have a saying, the wind remembers those who help it soar. Before Jake could respond, Kira leaned down and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture he somehow knew was deeply meaningful in her culture. Her feathers were incredibly soft, and he could feel the warmth of her skin. I'll be back, she said softly. When this delivery is complete, I'll be back. I'll be here, Jake replied, meaning it completely. Kira smiled, the first truly relaxed smile he'd seen from her. Good, because I think I've found something worth returning to. As Jake watched her ship disappear into the stars, he realized that his quiet life on Tempest Station had just become infinitely more interesting. For the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow, to the possibility of seeing those amber eyes and iridescent feathers again. 3 days later, as Jake was working on a routine maintenance job, the familiar sound of Sithari engines filled the docking bay. He looked up to see Kira's ship settling onto the landing pad, but this time there was no smoke, no damage. Just the elegant vessel he'd helped restore. Kira emerged from the airlock with a confident stride, her wings spread wide in obvious joy. The delivery was successful, she announced. The medicine arrived with 12 hours to spare, and the colony's medical officer says they've contained the outbreak. That's wonderful news, Jake said, wiping his hands on a rag. I'm glad everything worked out. It worked out because of you, Kira said, moving closer. And I've been thinking during the flight back about what you said about species not mattering when people work toward a common goal. Jake felt his heart rate increase. What about it? I've been flying alone for 3 years, Kira said. Taking contracts, making deliveries, proving my independence. But working with you showed me something I didn't expect. That partnership doesn't have to mean dependence. It can mean being stronger together than apart. What are you saying? Jake asked, hardly daring to hope. Kira's feathers shimmered with nervous energy. I'm saying that Tempest Station could use a reliable delivery service. And I could use a partner who understands ships, who sees pilots as equals, who's willing to work through the night to help people in need. Jake felt a grin spreading across his face. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership, Kira corrected. Morrison's repair bay could become Morrison and Velthara Freight and Repair. We could take contracts together, you handling the technical side, me handling the flying. We could help people across the galaxy. Together, Jake repeated, the word carrying infinite possibilities. Together, Kira confirmed, extending her hand. If you're willing to trust a proud Sithari with your future. Jake took her hand without hesitation, feeling the warmth and strength of her grip. If you're willing to trust a ground-bound human with yours. As they shook hands, Jake realized that he'd found something he hadn't even known he was looking for. Not just a business partner, but someone who understood his desire to help others, who shared his appreciation for the beauty of flight and the satisfaction of honest work. Looking into Kira's amber eyes, he saw his own feelings reflected there. The recognition of a kindred spirit, the promise of adventures yet to come, and the deep satisfaction of finding someone who truly saw him for who he was. The stars were vast and full of possibilities, and for the first time in his life, Jake Morrison was ready to spread his wings and soar among them, with the perfect partner by his side. In the months that followed, Morrison and Valthara Freight and Repair became known throughout the Outer Rim as the team to call when impossible deadlines needed to be met or when no one else would take the risk. They delivered medical supplies to plague-ravaged colonies, transported refugees to safety, and provided emergency repairs to ships stranded in dangerous territory. But more than that, they had found in each other the perfect complement, Jake's technical expertise and steady reliability, balanced by Kira's piloting brilliance and fierce determination. They were partners in every sense of the word, and as they worked side by side among the stars, they discovered that love could indeed transcend any boundary, even the space between ground and sky.